In an industry as financially driven as the movie business, the higher-ups have no shame in selling a lie to the general public in order to get our money. And the real shame is that we just keep on falling for it. So with that in mind, I am Gareth, this is What Culture, and here are 10 movies that sold you a lie. Number 10, Drive. A woman sued because the trailer had promised Fast and Furious action. Somebody actually sued over this one. A Michigan woman filed a lawsuit against distributor Film District and the theater where she saw Drive after feeling that she had been misled by a trailer that promised Fast and Furious-esque action, not the stripped-down modern noir that director Nicholas Winding Refn had created. Her demands? A refund for the cost of the ticket, only in America. Now, to be fair, Drive's trailers definitely made it look a lot more like a standard Hollywood action thriller than the graphically violent, stylized, and visually driven blend of art house and populist filmmaking that it actually was. And while many people may have felt that they'd been sold an entirely different movie by the time they'd parted with their cash and sat down in the theater, at least they still got to see one of the best films of 2011, eh? Take what you can get. Now I've got a question for you. Which movie did you feel sold you a lie? You let me know in the comment section down below. Now back to the video. Number 9, Crimson Peak. It was more gothic romance than creepy horror. The horror genre is one of the most profitable in the entire industry. The low financial risk involved for the studios, coupled with the high financial reward that comes with the audience's continued love of having the absolute crap scared out of them, has made horror a consistent slam dunk at the box office. Guillermo del Toro's Crimson Peak turned out to be a commercial disappointment, however, earning just $74.7 million worldwide against a $55 million budget. Why? Well, because it most definitely was not a horror movie, despite the marketing campaign insisting otherwise, and left many casual horror fans rather disappointed as a result. Seemingly, the only person telling people that Crimson Peak wasn't a straight-up scary movie was Del Toro himself. The trailers were all based around the spooky locations and jump scares in an attempt to draw in the horror crowd, when in reality the movie was actually a gothic romance with supernatural elements that relied much more heavily on character and atmosphere than things going bump in the night. Number 8, Mission Impossible 2. Anthony Hopkins is only a minor character. Mission Impossible 2 is very much a product of its time. Watching the movie now is like peering into a turn of the millennium time capsule. Tom Cruise with the floppiest of floppy hair riding a motorcycle wearing sunglasses and a leather jacket, performing martial arts in slow motion while Limp Bizkit blares in the background. It was a strange time for the action movie. From watching the trailers, you could be forgiven for assuming that Anthony Hopkins plays a key role in the story, as he featured prominently in the marketing, dishing out wizened exposition to super spy Ethan Hunt. Except that really wasn't the case at all. Even though he had more dialogue in the movie's promo spots than just about anybody else, the veteran Academy Award winner barely factors into the narrative at all, with his role being that of the guy who randomly turns up to advance the plot and not much else really. Stranger still, Hopkins isn't even listed in the credits. If they were attempting to keep his role under wraps until the movie came out, then the person who cuts the trailers together did not get the memo, did they? Number 7, World's Greatest Dad. It's very, very dark. Arguably Robin Williams' last great performance, the premise of World's Greatest Dad didn't exactly make it an easy sell to casual audiences. I mean, how the hell was the studio supposed to market a satirical black comedy about a failed writer who stages his son's accidental death from autoerotic asphyxiation as a suicide before penning a fake journal allegedly written by the recently deceased that finally gets him the recognition for his writing talents that he had always craved? Simple, they sold the movie as something else entirely. From the music to the jokes, all of the advertising for World's Greatest Dad comes across as your standard quirky indie comedy, with no mention whatsoever of the potentially controversial subject matter. People drawn in by the presence of Williams and the promise of a whimsical tale of self-discovery would be in for a huge shock when they discovered just how dark and risky Bobcat Goldthwait's movie really was. Number 6, Observe and Report is not a Judd Apatow-style comedy. In 2009, just 3 months after Paul Blatt, Mall Cop had inexplicably earned $183.3 million at the box office, and with Judd Apatow's brand of comedy at the peak of its popularity, Seth Rogen starred in the vaguely similar Observe and Report. With Rogen in the lead and comedy stalwart Anna Faris, Aziz Ansari, Patton Oswalt and Danny McBride lending support, it seemed like another cut-and-paste entry in the lovable loser gets the girl and betters himself in the process subgenre. Or at least that's what the trailers would have you believe, with their reliance on quippy banter and Rogen's improv-heavy style. In reality, Observe and Report was much darker than the average studio comedy, and Rogen's character was a lot closer to Travis Bickle than Paul Blatt. Fans of the actor's usually genial output must have been shocked to discover that he was not playing his usual stoner dude character, but instead a bipolar, drug-addled psychopath of sorts. Yep, did not see that coming. Thank you very much for checking out this video today, my friend, and if you are enjoying what you're watching, then hit that subscribe button down below and you'll get more of this What Culture stuff in your life. Number 5, After Earth is not a Will Smith blockbuster from an unknown director. After Earth is a prime example of what happens when a movie star lets their ego run wild. Based on a story by Will Smith, produced by his Overbrook Entertainment Company and co-starring his son Jaden, the original pitch was a contemporary father-son survival tale, before the former Fresh Prince decided to have it set 1,000 years in the future instead, upping the budget to $150 million in the process. Both the trailers and posters made the project look like a two-hander, when in reality, Smith Sr., one of the most charismatic actors on the planet, spends most of it sitting on his ass, doing nothing but spout tedious exposition in one of the worst performances of his career, while rampant nepotism allows the charisma-free and rather wooden Jaden to anchor the whole damn movie. To cap off the campaign of misdirection, the man behind the camera was none other than M. Night Shyamalan, whose name had lost so much pulling power after a string of duds that it was only mentioned during the movie's end credits. Shyamalan has since gone on to rehabilitate his career, of course, and Smith Sr. also appears to be making a bit of a big screen comeback after his Oscars controversy, but Jaden has only made a few other appearances on the movie screen ever since. Number 4, The Grey. Liam Neeson does not fight wolves. The Grey might just be Joe Carnahan's best ever movie. A tense and gripping, character-driven tale of man versus nature, with a surprising philosophical slant, supported by incredibly atmospheric cinematography and a solid ensemble cast, led by one of Liam Neeson's best performances in years. However, by leaning way too heavily into Neeson's reinvention as a bankable action hero, the marketing missold the movie to many people as a much simpler action-heavy survival thriller, especially as every trailer ended with the money shot of Neeson taping broken glass to his fists and charging headlong into battle with a damn wolf. Now, it is still a great movie without a doubt, but many people were left disappointed when they discovered that the main hook of the marketing actually turned out to be the ending. When the screen cut to black just as the final battle was about to begin, there were more than a few audible cries of "what the F" in theaters all around the world, and you can't really blame them. Number 3, Hercules. The 12 Labors are just a myth. On paper, it seemed like a match made in heaven, this. Dwayne Johnson, a man so much larger than life in both personality and stature, playing the demigod son of Zeus in an action-packed fantasy epic that would see him tackle the 12 labors, and kick a hell of a lot of mythical ass in the process. Naturally, this led to a great deal of disappointment when the movie came out, and all of the best shots in the trailer of Hercules scrapping with the Nemean lion, Linnaean hydra, and Erymanthian boar were all just part of a first act montage. Not only that, but it turned out that in the context of the movie, the 12 labors were total BS myths, perpetuated by Hercules' nephew to exaggerate his legend. Talk about a damn cop-out. Instead, Brett Ratner's fantasy-tinged historical actioner follows a tedious politically motivated plot, populated with one-dimensional cliches that pretend to be actual characters, all while Johnson does his best to elevate the material with his almost bulletproof natural charisma, despite sporting a lion's head as a hat and wearing armor that looks hilariously small on his gigantic frame. I mean, any clothes would, to be fair. Number 2, The Amazing SpiderMan. It forgets to tell the untold story. It was right there in giant letters on the movie's very first teaser poster, The Untold Story. In an attempt to differentiate itself from the Sam Raimi trilogy that had ended just 5 years previously, Mark Webb's reboot promised to put a fresh spin on Spider-Man. Only it didn't, did it? Instead, we saw the very much told story of high school student Peter Parker getting bitten by a radioactive spider, getting a lecture about power and responsibility from his Uncle Ben, who is then tragically killed, before striking up a romantic relationship with a fellow student and battling a CGI villain. Where have I seen this one before? So what the hell happened to the untold story then? In short, well, Sony happened. The infamous 25-minute cut of the movie, cobbled together from the avalanche of marketing materials, features a huge amount of footage that was never used, with the version of the Amazing Spider-Man that hit theaters bearing all the hallmarks of studio interference. Peter just abandons the hunt for Uncle Ben's killer, a pivotal scene featuring Irfan Khan's character that was seen in some trailers was nowhere to be found, the lizard SWAT team just kind of disappears, and the entire subplot surrounding Peter's genetic history and how it ties his parents and Kurt Connors together is just quietly swept under the rug, despite being mentioned by several different characters in trailers that people can very easily view online. Number 1. Bridge to Terabithia. It is not the whimsical fantasy that you thought it was. For those unfamiliar with Catherine Patterson's novel, watching the big screen adaptation of Bridge to Terabithia must have come as quite a shock to those drawn in by the marketing campaign. The trailer's dramatic music, myriad of CGI creatures, and from Walt Disney Pictures and Walden Media proclamation, deliberately played up the Narnia connection. But the movie is something else entirely. The marketing misrepresented the movie so badly that the director, whose name I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce, so there it is on the screen, distanced himself from it altogether, saying we the filmmakers had nothing to do with that promotion. We don't really think that it's an appropriate way of selling the movie. If they are anticipating a Harry Potter movie, then we are in trouble. Co-writer and producer David Patterson, son of author Catherine, was even more succinct after seeing the first trailer. His reaction? Well, my mum is gonna hate it. Uh-oh. Despite being the main selling point of the movie, the fantasy land of Terabithia only takes up a small amount of screen time, and is completely imaginary, serving only as a way for the two young leads to hide from the tribulations of daily life. It takes a bold and probably very cynical person to market a tear-jerking coming-of-age story about heartbreak, escapism, and loss as a family-friendly adventure. But that is exactly what they did in the end, and people fell for it.